C-Dub on the beat. Back against the wall, CL20's knocking rated. IGI's tripping, validated, shoot ready. Ground incarceration, got my people living daily. Gang wars back to back till the hole is where they send me. Back against the wall, CL20's knocking rated.
Hey yo, what's good with everybody, man? I hope everybody's having a productive day, feeling blessed, and like I always say, it's one life, one chance. We only got one chance to do this right. Let's get it done. With that being said, about to drop another video. One of my subscribers asked me to get back to the Black Handbook, so I read a chapter, took notes. Now I got to drop the info that I learned. So with that being said, hit that subscribe button, hit that like, always leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Check the links in the description for all my music links. Spotify, Apple Music will be right there. Before I get into the video, obviously I'm going to hit you with some crime news. Trip out on this. It just happened just January the other day. Well, that was like 4 months ago. Anyways, it says Italy's most wanted mafia boss, Matteo Messina De Niro, I wonder if he's related to Robert De Niro, has been arrested in Sicily after 30 years on the run. Said he was reportedly detained in a private clinic in Sicily's capital where he was receiving treatment for cancer. He is alleged to be the boss of the notorious Cosa Nostra Mafia, and he was tried and sentenced to life in jail in 2002 over numerous, more than 100 members of the armed forces were involved in this arrest, the Italian media reported. Think about it. He was on the run for 30 years for a 1992 of an anti-mafia prosecutor, Giovanni Falcone and Paola Borsellino, the deadly 1993 bomb attack in Milan, Florence, and Rome, and the kidnapping, torture, and of 11-year-old son of a mafioso turned state witness. Dang, I thought women and kids are off limits, but obviously not. Maybe Sicily and Italy conduct themselves in a different fashion, but imagine that. The dude's like, all right, you don't want to turn state evidence? You're going to tell me we're going to snatch your son. That's a cold game right there. Messina De Niro once boasted that he could fill a cemetery with his victims. The mafia boss oversaw racketeering, illegal waste dumping, money laundering, and drug trafficking for the powerful Cosa Nostra organized crime syndicate. He was reportedly the protege of Toto Rina, head of the Corleone clan, who was arrested in 1993 after 23 years on the run. And they're stating this, that he is thought to be Cosa Nostra's last secret keeper. Many informers and prosecutors believe that he holds all the information and the names involved in several of the most high-profile crimes by the mafia, including the bomb attacks that, Falcone and Borsellino. And even though he was a fugitive since 1993, he was thought to have still been issuing orders to his subordinates from various secret locations. Now, they say, that one fool that played in that movie, The Irishman, which was probably one of my top favorite movies aside from Casino and Goodfellas. I wonder if this guy knows where Jimmy Hoffa's at. I mean, think about it. You're doing a life sentence. You ain't going nowhere. You might as well get rich at the end. I'd be like, you know what? I got all the secrets. I'm dying. Give me $1 million and I'll write a book about every secret that you want to know and get it published. Next thing you know, Jimmy Hoffa just back. He's back. We'll find him. So what do you guys think about that? The most notorious mafia boss in this world got busted. Leave me a comment. So let's get into the book, right? This chapter was a little bit different. This chapter talked about a lot of his upbringings, how he grew up, what it was like in the household. But I'm going to share with you a couple of details. And then, like I said, I turned it into a positive message on behalf of the youth. In the beginning of 1973, in the beginning of the chapter, it specifically states there was a funeral service for Cheyenne Cadenas in the city of Bakersfield. And the people that were attending that funeral at the time, while Boxer was still a child, was Luis Weddle Buff Flores and Richmond Grumpy Garcia, the individuals who really started the Mexican Mafia. Now, they said while Cheyenne Cadenas was getting buried, obviously the family provided a tombstone. And in the tombstone, it was written in Spanish, but I'm gonna interpret it in English for you guys. It says, "You will always be remembered by family and friends." But the big homies, the mafiosos, decided to carve an M in his tombstone as well, because they wanted to make it very clear that that was their brother as well, that this was his family as well. So think about it. They had a funeral for one of the most notorious Mexican mafia members known in our history. One of the co-founders of the Mexican mafia, one of the dudes that always talked about, that's always going to be respected as a legend. So I wonder what that was like. You know, all the mafiosos that first started the Mexican mafia, all his Emmett brothers right there at his funeral service paying tribute to his death, burying their brother. Now that's honor right there. I don't think you see that nowadays like you would back in the days. Sometimes people on the streets, you know, their homies pass away. Sometimes they don't even show up because they're having drama with their baby mama. Or, you know, it's just something comes up. Or sometimes, you know, individuals are so strung out, they're just like, oh, rest in peace to the homie, pour some liquor out. Don't even attend his funeral. Don't even help pay for their funeral, so on and so forth. But these mafiosos actually attended their brother's funeral and buried one of their legends. So just get that image in your head, that visual, how powerful that moment was. It's food for thought. Now, the thing about it is he does talk about his household. It didn't really sound like a broken home. You know, he had a mother and a father. The mother and the father always arguing. He perceived her one way, she perceived him another way. So maybe it was an unbalanced relationship that his siblings and himself grew up in, witnessing, which probably didn't want to be at home. That's probably what drove him to the streets. But see, that's one of the biggest excuses that I've always heard about, you know, youth joining gangs. Mostly interpreted by, you know, therapists, school teachers, youth programs, scared straight programs is like, oh, most of these kids join gangs because they didn't have a father figure. He actually had a father figure who was anti-gangs, who wanted the best for him. A mother who prayed with him, who wanted the best for him. I never really understood it, but because it wasn't my situation. But I've always wondered how just because you had a single parent that made kids join gangs. Because I had a single parent who worked 2 jobs and then went on the clubs on the weekends. You know, my mom was from Tulare, so she went to the Five Highs. She went to the Angelinas in Farmersville. Any bar in Tulare County, she was there hopping. Looking for paisas. Looking for a stepdaddy for me. So, why are you laughing?
The way you said it.
See what I mean? I need my own studio. So anyways, she taught me right. She always kept me in school. She always made sure I was in school. She always made sure I was in sports. I didn't grow up in a broken home. Yeah, I grew up without a father, but I also had a stepdad who was a paisa who worked at a ranch, coincidentally. But he was a good man. And he taught me morals and values and what it was like to be responsible and be a man and raise a family. So I don't blame nothing on my household or the lack of parental supervision or just being around a negative environment, because Tulare on the east side, everybody will tell you that Tulare on the east side, bro, it was a nice neighborhood. Yeah, it had 2 barrios in it, STL and SF, but the west side was where it was popping. That's where the hood was at. So like I said, I don't really see everybody that's joined the gang has their own personal reasons or own inexcusable excuse as to why they joined the gang and why they gravitated towards the gang lifestyle. But in his case, he grew up in a regular family who was just parents argue like mostly any other relationship, for that matter. And he had his siblings. I mean, maybe there are some instances where, you know, lacking a father figure, a man to guide you in the right direction and be a man, might result or might have an impact on why individuals and why kids do gravitate towards gangs. Because, you know, sometimes you always hear that saying, you know, a mother can't raise a boy to be a man. But I kind of disagree with that terminology. Like a mother could do a mom's job and a dad's job. Trust me, there's a lot of single women out here that actually handle business and take care of business and raise a family on their own. So I don't know what this man's really reasoning was to join a gang in the first place. But he does break down his household. You know, the parents were fighting, and he just ran towards the streets. Now, it also says that, you know, where he started running the streets at was in the streets of Artesia, which, you know, I've heard a lot of people, you know, speak about this area. I met a lot of Sureños that were from Artesia. I actually met a Mexican mafia on the SNY from Artesia named Wicked. Then he said it was Hawaiian Gardens in Norwalk. I also met Sureños from both those areas as well. Now, I'm not too familiar with these areas. Maybe my subscribers can tell me a little bit more about Artesia, Hawaiian Gardens, and Norwalk. If these are actually, what are the original barrios that, you know, first started out as sureños. You know, I would like to know that information. I think that would be highly enlightening. And his older brother was the first one actually to join ARTA13. And I think that's probably what inspired Rene Boxer to actually join the gang, because I think well, in the chapter he says he idolized his brother. You know, he looked up to his brother. And I think that's one of the sole reasons and one of the big purposes when why youth join gangs is because they always look up to somebody else who was actually a part of the lifestyle. Now imagine if you didn't have these individuals' presence in your life, you might have the opportunity to look up to different kind of role models. And I think that's one of the biggest impacts is that the role models that we're provided for growing up are the ones that we're going to inspire to become. So if you're raised around individuals who love sports, who love this, who love to work, you know, you're going to receive that inspiration and encouragement to go down that path, especially if these are people that you like to be around. These are the people you want to associate with. These are the people that you look up to as, you know, the guidance and direction that you need. But in his case, he actually had an older brother who he was fond of, who actually joined ARTA13. But in this chapter, Boxer provides a perception that he had about gang members. And obviously in Artesia and Hawaiian Gardens and Norwalk, the Mexican presence was big. And obviously that presence of Mexicanos that were in all these barrios all became gang members. So yes, I think I think sometimes people can be a product of their environment as well, and which highly influenced him to say, you know what, this is my raza, this is what I want to become, this is what I want to be. But look at his interpretation of what a gang member really was. And I'm going to read it to you. He said he thought gang members were charismatic with their tattoos and sharp cholo outfits, beanies, wool Pendletons, shirts with white t-shirts underneath, the beige khaki pants and shiny black leather shoes. He said to him that was cool. For a 12-year-old kid looking up to these grown men who dress good. And you guys know, you guys can honestly admit, since the Pachuco days and the zoot suits up into, you know, our cultura, the way we dress, the Pendletons, the creased up dickies. Man, you know how many movies I've seen where you will not see a Sureño go out to the streets with a wrinkled white shirt. No sirree, Bob. You're talking about he's going to have that whole thing ironed out, creased up. You ever watch the movies where you see a lot of cholos from LA that have that little ironing board right there? They be right there in their tank top and boxers and house shoes. You know, the Godfather slippers, and they're just ironing their pants, starching their pants, ironing their t-shirts. Then they get dressed up and they had a little, you know, the gold Cuban link. They had the Lokes. They had the Pendletons on. Honestly, I can't even recall a day in my life I ever seen a Sureño with a wrinkled outfit. They take pride in their outfit. They take pride in how they dress. That's a representation of who they are and where they're from. And everybody knows, you know, the streets of Los Angeles wouldn't be Los Angeles without Mexicanos. I'm just saying, I'm going to point that out there. I'm pretty sure I'm going to receive criticism for it, but I'm going to point that out there. And then he goes on to say, like, pretty much, like, it was cool. The way he perceived these gang members from these barrios is that they were powerful and they were respected. And then he said, plus they were chick magnets. So when I read that part, I started laughing. I was like, you know what? You're right, bro. Being a thug, man, you know, women love felons. Women love gangsters. And what do men do all their lives? Is try to impress women. It don't matter what it is. You know, if the woman was bad, I would be a barista wearing a little Starbucks apron if I knew I had a chance with her. I'll look like a dummy. But in his way, he was like, hey, being a rebel was like being a chick magnet. So obviously there was a big part of his decision making was like, man, I want to get all the women I want. So I'm going to become a mafioso. I'm going to become a gang member. But overall, it was just the environment that he grew up in. And it kind of sucks to say that maybe that's probably been our downfall, you know, organizing these barrios and taking over these barrios as our communities, as Mexicano communities, you know, instilling our culture in the neighborhoods that we live in. But that's just a part of life. The only problem is now that we turned it into the gang lifestyle, all it did was tell the youth, like, man, you don't really have no other options and you don't really need no other options other than to join the barrio and be a homeboy. So in a sense, it benefited us because, you know, it organized us to protect one another, to live with one another. We created our own community, our own society to take care of one another. You know, our cultura, you know, is amazing. There's a lot of amazing things that come out of it. It's just the criminal part of the criminal aspect and the criminal part about it is what society hates about it. And it didn't help the fact that, his brother, he looked at him as a hero, and his brother joined the barrio, pretty much encouraged him to make his decision overall. But he said it was one night at a liquor store. He was chilling with two of his homies. One of his homies was Apache, which I'm not sure if it's the same one that actually became a Mexican mafia member in the later on chapters. But they took him into a dark alley, asked him if he was lethal, and they jumped him in the hood. So even though he probably just went around the neighborhood actually kicking it with them, who knows whether he actually made it a point to say, you know what, I want to be part of the body or not. They jumped him in anyways. Now he's a homeboy. Now there ain't no turning back. Because the concept blood in and blood out, that's your blood in. You're going to spill yours on behalf of your body, or you're going to spill yours on behalf of what you believe in, and for these homies to recognize your true colors, where your quota's at. And once he was jumped in, they said Boxer and a couple of his homies, they actually joined a youth program. It was a boxing program on Whittier Boulevard. If anybody can tell me if that still exists out there. Obviously it's going to be an iconic place because, it's part of this mafioso book. He joined a youth program on Whittier Boulevard. And based on maybe his physical development and his training and his expertise in this field of sport, that's where he got the name Boxer, and it's stuck with him to this day. So my question to you guys is, do you guys actually think a lot of these youth out here joining these gangs is a result of, being a product of our environments? Because like I said, my situation, I grew up in a nice neighborhood. I grew up with a single parent, stepdad that was, around for 8 years, and then him and my mom separated. But I chose to join a gang because of my primo. I looked up to my primo. My primo, rest in peace, the 1L1C tribute. But even then, my cousin did good in school. He graduated high school. He played football for 4 years. And even when he was a homeboy in the streets, once he had a baby, he got married, had kids, had a family, had his own landscaping business, had a house. It wasn't until they got separated and when he kind of spiraled out of control because he lost his family. Then he started indulging in drugs, making a couple of trips to county jail, started selling drugs to get back on his feet. Plus, right before my cousin passed away, he was going to the College of Sequoias. He was actually going to school to earn his degree when he was shot in the streets of Tulare. But I looked up to my cousin. But I also have another primo who used to start off as a homeboy, kicked it with homeboys, got hurt, turned his life around, and became a sheriff for the Kings County Police Department. So, there's an opportunity. Like sometimes we might take this path down destruction, but there's always an opportunity for you to finally open your eyes and wake up and say, you know what, I'm going to make a change for the better. In his case, he didn't want to make a change for the better. And obviously, I'm not talking bad about the streets of Los Angeles, but Los Angeles is gang infested, whether it's Bloods, Cribs, Asian gangs, Sureños. LA is always going to be known as a gang-banging community. So maybe he didn't have a chance to change his life. But I don't want to make that excuse for him or for anybody else for that matter, because we all have our own minds. We all think for ourselves. It's just the environments that we grow up in. Sometimes if that feels like it's the only option, then we're gonna take that option. But in his case, he wanted to become a gang member. But there's a lot of youth out here that want to become gang members, not really knowing what a gang member is or what's expected of a gang member. See, I didn't know either. I just thought, I was banging the color, I was banging the hood, I was fighting everybody on the streets. I shoot it out with a couple of people, get locked up, come out with big reputations and big respect. And the more and more I continued that cycle of violence and that cycle of crime, the harder it became for me later on down the road, the more responsibilities that I had. Then I started working with big homies. And once I made it to the prison system, like Renee did, that's when you start to see the realities of everything. How we were blind to the fact that everything that we were doing, all these bodies we were joining for, it gets deeper than that. And throughout his book, he's going to show you it gets deeper than that. So my question to my subscribers is this, based on this chapter, was just solely about his upbringing and how he got jumped into his barrio. Do you think that the lack of parental supervision is what drives the youth to actually join these gangs? That maybe if there was more interaction with the parents, we could stop a lot of these kids from joining gangs in the first place? Or do you think it's just something that us youth at the time that joining gangs just want to do? Or are we a product of our own neighborhoods? And if so, are we as a community that actually created these gangs, are we responsible for the youth actually gravitating toward these gangs because of the decisions we made in the past? You guys let me know in the comment section. So with that being said, like I always say, it's one life, one chance. When they got one chance to do this right, let's get it done. Peace.